All right, welcome back. This time we're going to be doing the oil filter housing gasket. It's a $6 part, but about an hour and a half to 2 hour job. But if you're hitting the high mileage, which most of the E46s, BMWs, even anything over 100,000, 150,000, that thing's going to start leaking. So hopefully this video can help you out. Okay, so for this job, you'll need your oil filter housing, the gasket itself. You'll need a 19mm wrench. You'll need a ratchet and a couple of extensions. 16mm socket, 13mm socket, a regular Sharpie or a marker. That's for writing down the sequence of the bolts that you remove, because they are different sizes. You'll also need a couple of picks. So first what you're going to do, remove the oil filter housing cap. Just loosen it so that you can get the oil out of there. You don't have to drain the oil. And then once you loosen it, the oil will relieve out of the actual oil filter area, and you can get started. For this part, we're going to free up some space. We're going to try to remove these two screws at the top here. It's a Torx T20. Two screws right here. Unplug this harness, and you're just going to pull straight up. Okay, and it'll give us some access room to work on this front side of the engine. This belt right here, you take a picture of this before you remove it so you can remember how to put it back on. But what we're going to do is take this off, just off this pulley here and here, okay, for the power steering. Just remove that part off and just let it hang. And remember to take that picture, okay, so you'll remember how to put it back on. Okay, so to get started for this oil filter housing gasket, we can, if you want to, you can remove this top hose. And if you already got your coolant drained, it's optional, but I have it disconnected, and just put it to the side. And first you're going to remove these two 13mm bolts that hold this power steering canister bracket, and just remove it as one unit to give you some space to get to the oil filter housing gasket here. So let's get started with that. You're going to remove that first, and then we'll have to remove the Vanos nut here. I believe that's a 17. All right, so let's get these two first, okay? Okay, so once we've got the oil, once we've got the power steering reservoir removed and put to the side, you can, and you've got your belt removed. So you got to take off so you're done taking off the belt, and there's 13mm bolts that hold the alternator on. So you're going to take the alternator off and the wire that's connected to it, and that's a 13 also. All right, so we're going to go ahead and remove those bolts, take that alternator out. Okay, so to get the alternator out, you're going to start where that pulley is that's connected to the alternator. There's a dust cover on that pulley itself. Take a flathead, and you're just going to slightly pry it and remove that cover. It doesn't take too much force, and just set that cover aside. There's a 16mm bolt that goes across through that pulley. We're going to go ahead and remove that, and the rest are 13s, okay? Okay, so I got the 13mm nut that holds the hot wire to the alternator. You just gotta take that off and press in the clip on the back. There's a harness that you just press the pin down and pull it off. And on the two fronts to get that alternator off, there's two 16mm bolts. So just one right here and one right below that one. Okay, so let's take that off. Okay, so I got the alternator out. Once you unbolt those two 16mm bolts and you take off that connector on the back, this one here and a 13 right here, and you just put it to the side, you got to wiggle this back and forth. It's in there with friction, stuck in there snug. All right, so I just put that to the side. We're gonna get to the 6 13mm bolts on the oil filter housing. Okay, so this is when you remove the alternator, you can see that oil leaking all back there. That's from the oil filter housing gasket. So once removing the alternator, you can view the bolts. There are 6 of them. They're 13s going right here, here, and down, just straight down on 2 rows on each side, 3 on 3. And they are different lengths on some of them, so you have to keep them separated. And where you took them out, you gotta set them down somewhere and number them. I'm gonna do it on paper, and I'll show you after how I did mine. Just take that out and remove this connector. There's one in the back, just those connectors out. Okay, so this is where the Sharpie and the paper comes into play. Each one of these bolts, I marked the back of them a number. So this one's number 6. It's the last one. So if you use a Sharpie on that, but you gotta clean the surface right here on each bolt and just mark a number on them. It doesn't matter what number you use or where you put it, just as long as you have it matching. I have mine 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I just put the number matching which one I pulled out. You can put it in any order. As long as you match it right, it doesn't matter. It's just something that when I put it back on, I'm going to know which number goes on which bolt hole, okay? That's pretty much it for that. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take off the housing. Okay, I have it separated from the engine block. There's the oil filter housing right here. And the gasket is sitting right in that area. You just gotta pry that off and make sure this side is clean. Okay, you just gotta wipe down this side. Gasket goes in there and then put it back in. There's some dowel pins that it lines up on, and just put that back in. We're gonna torque those bolts back in, crisscross pattern, 24 foot-pound. Okay, so I was able to remove the old gasket, but not in one piece. This is the new one. There's a flat side, and the other side is it pretty much raises to a point on the gasket. This side's the flat side, so the flat side is going to be onto the engine block. And then the pointed side, that's because it's from flat and it goes up to like a cone, or also it's like triangular. It's pointed here on this side here. It comes in as a triangular shaped. So the flat side sits on the engine. pointed side is going to be on the oil filter housing. Removing the old gasket, I was using the pick, it just came off in pieces. It was so caked and baked onto the metal that I had to go back and really dig out all of the old pieces of that gasket. Okay, so once that's out, flat side to the engine block. And we're gonna put it on there and then tighten it down 24 foot-pounds, okay, and all 6 bolts on the housing. Okay, so I'm carefully just so this is the new gasket. I'm just carefully just pressing it very softly in and have it fully seated. Okay, so once you've pressed each surface part of it, seated in, it's ready to go back. Just gotta wipe this side down and put it back in. Okay, so I got it seated on to the engine block. The easiest way to do it is to line up the top right side bolt. And that one has the dowel pin to guide it on there. So once you just barely seat it on the pins on the top right and bottom left, once they're seated in, you're gonna get a rubber hammer or rubber mallet. Just one of these. Just tap it till it's fully seated in. All right, so we're gonna grab our bolts that we had on our paper numbered. So I'm gonna get the number 4 and 3 first, just because I know some of those are the pins, the dowel pins on there. Okay, so I got all the bolts back in the order I had written down on the paper. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to set the first torque tightening down sequence to, I'm going to tighten it at 14 pounds. Okay, so I'm going to set 14 foot-pounds and tighten it all down before I go on to the final torque, 24 pounds. Okay, so this one we're going to do 14 pounds foot-pounds for the first sequence. Okay. Okay, so it's torqued correctly now. Now we're going to put the alternator back on and put the power wire that goes into the alternator. Okay, so we got the oil filter housing torqued down to 24 foot-pounds on all 6 of these bolts, and they're all crisscross pattern. Now we're going to plug back all these sensors and go ahead and put back the Vanos hose line here. Just going to tighten it back up, and then we're going to plug all the sensors back in. Okay, so there's 1, 2, So 1, 2 in the back, and this bolt here, and then we'll put the alternator has a plug and the wire. So when we'll put that back, make sure we put those two back in. All right, so let's do that. Okay, so I got the alternator top bolt in. I have yet to do the bottom one. So get the top one in, and then you're gonna tighten that down lightly, enough for it to still move the alternator around. So don't tighten it fully, just tighten it snug a little bit. And then once the top is in, you can press down on the alternator itself and then put the bottom bolt in. And then so once we slide that in, we'll torque it to spec. Okay, so I managed to finally get the bottom bolt in. So what you do is you put the top one in, thread it in most of the way, but leave slack so it can move up and down or still play in there. When you push your whole weight on the alternator, just press down with your whole weight, try to press down, and it'll slide into the bottom. And then once you put the bolt in, take your rubber mallet or your rubber mallet, and just give this a couple of whacks, pretty hard, so it can seat down a little further, and then you can it'll just slide right in. So that part takes a lot of patience to put that alternator back. It was tough, not gonna lie. Okay, so when putting back the two bolts, upper and lower, the idler and the that goes through all the way to the alternator, both of them need to be torqued to 25 foot-pounds. So we're gonna do that also, 25 foot-pounds. Okay, got the power steering reservoir back on, the two 13mm bolts. So all you gotta do is put the fluids in, your oil, and put the air box back in. You're good to go. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.